I stood at the entrance of the chapel in my wedding dress, my heart pounding with excitement. The doors were about to open, and I'd walk down that aisle toward Daniel, the man I loved. I glanced at my father, Jack, expecting to see pride in his eyes. Instead, his face was cold, expressionless. "Dad?" I whispered, reaching for his arm. He pulled away. The doors opened, the music swelled, and everyone turned to watch us. But he didn't move. "You're not my successful child," he said loud enough for the front rows to hear. "I won't walk you down the aisle." The words hit me like a slap. My breath caught in my throat. People started whispering, turning to each other with confused looks. My father turned and walked back through the side door, leaving me standing there alone. The music continued playing, but I couldn't move. My sister Vanessa sat in the second row, her face blank, offering no support. My brother Derek looked away. Hot tears burned my eyes as the reality crashed over me. My own father had abandoned me on the most important day of my life. My name is Emma Hartley, and that moment at the altar changed everything. For 28 years, I'd lived in the shadow of my siblings. Vanessa was the lawyer, the one who made partner at 30. Derek was the surgeon, the golden boy who could do no wrong. And me? I was just Emma, the middle child who chose teaching over corporate success. My father never understood why I wanted to work with kids instead of climbing some corporate ladder. "You're wasting your potential," he'd tell me at every family dinner. But I loved teaching. I loved seeing third graders' faces light up when they finally understood a math problem. That didn't matter to Jack Hartley though. Success meant money and status, and I had neither. Standing there in my wedding dress, abandoned and humiliated, I finally understood the truth. I would never be enough for him. Not because I wasn't worthy, but because I wasn't what he wanted me to be. That realization hurt more than his rejection. Daniel appeared beside me moments later, his face filled with concern. He took my arm gently and whispered, "We don't need him." Together, we walked down that aisle. Every step felt heavy, but his hand on mine kept me moving forward. My best friend Claire sat crying in the third row, her hand pressed to her mouth. The ceremony continued, but I barely heard the words. When we said our vows, I tried to focus on Daniel's eyes, on the love I saw there. But my father's words kept echoing in my mind. The reception was awkward. People kept asking where Jack was, and I had to smile and say he wasn't feeling well. My mother Patricia sat at the family table, silent and pale, unable to meet my eyes. She hadn't defended me. She just watched her husband humiliate our daughter and done nothing. That hurt almost as much as his rejection. When we cut the cake, I noticed Vanessa whispering to Derek, both of them glancing at me with what looked like pity. The week after the wedding, I couldn't stop replaying that moment. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart racing, seeing my father's cold eyes and hearing those crushing words. Daniel held me when I cried, but he couldn't understand the depth of the wound. Nobody called from my family. Not my mother, not Vanessa, not Derek. The silence was deafening. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn my father's approval, and I'd failed. Every report card I'd brought home with straight A's, every teaching award I'd won, every time I'd helped a struggling student succeed, none of it mattered. I wasn't successful in his eyes because I didn't make enough money. One morning, I sat at our small kitchen table, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call him, to ask why he'd done it, to try one more time to make him understand. But something stopped me. A small voice in my head whispered, "Why are you still chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught?" 2 weeks later, my mother finally called. Her voice was quiet, apologetic. "He didn't mean it the way it sounded," she said, already making excuses. Your father just has strong opinions about success. I felt anger rise in my chest. He humiliated me in front of everyone I know, I said, my voice shaking. He abandoned me at the altar. There was a long pause. You know how he is about careers. If you'd just taken that corporate job instead of teaching. I hung up. My own mother was blaming me for his cruelty. That night, I made a decision. I was done chasing their approval. I was done trying to fit into their narrow definition of success. For the first time in my life, I was going to focus on what I wanted, not what they expected. Daniel found me in our bedroom, staring out the window. You okay? He asked. I turned to him and smiled, genuinely smiled. I will be, I said. I'm finally going to stop living for them. I threw myself into my teaching job with new intensity. Every lesson plan became a challenge to myself. Could I make this more engaging? Could I reach that one quiet kid in the back? My principal noticed the change. You've always been good, she told me during a hallway conversation, but lately you've been exceptional. I started staying after school to help struggling students. I created a tutoring program for kids whose parents couldn't afford outside help. Word spread, and soon I had a waiting list. Other teachers started asking for my lesson plans and strategies. For the first time, I felt like I was building something meaningful, something that was entirely mine. At home, Daniel supported every idea I had. When I mentioned wanting to create an online resource for teachers, he helped me set up a website. When I stayed up late writing curriculum guides, he brought me coffee and encouraged me. This was what partnership looked like, what family should feel like. Not constant judgment and comparison, but support and belief. 3 months after the wedding, Vanessa called. Dad wants to talk, she said without any greeting. My stomach clenched. I don't think that's a good idea. Come on, Emma. He's family. You can't just cut him off. I laughed, a bitter sound. He cut me off first, remember? In front of 200 people. Vanessa sighed, that same condescending sigh she'd used our whole lives. You're being dramatic. He just has high standards. Maybe if you'd achieved more. I interrupted her. I've achieved plenty. I have a master's degree. I impact hundreds of kids' lives every year. I'm building programs that actually help people. Just because I'm not making 6 figures doesn't mean I'm worthless. The line went quiet. Then Vanessa said, well, Derek and I are having dinner with them Sunday. If you change your mind. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling the familiar weight of being the family disappointment. But this time, something was different. The weight felt lighter. I was starting to not care what they thought. 6 months passed. My tutoring program grew, and the school board noticed. They invited me to present at a district meeting about innovative teaching methods. Standing in front of 40 educators and administrators, I felt nervous but excited. I shared my strategies, my data showing improved student performance, my vision for expanding the program district-wide. When I finished, the applause was genuine. The superintendent approached me afterward. We'd like to discuss making this an official district initiative, she said, shaking my hand. Would you be interested in developing it? I drove home in a daze. This was recognition, real recognition from people who understood what I was trying to accomplish. That evening, Claire came over for dinner. She'd been my rock through everything, checking in regularly, listening when I needed to vent. You're glowing, she said, hugging me. Something good happened. I told her about the meeting, about the superintendent's interest. Claire raised her wine glass. To proving them all wrong, she said. We clinked glasses, but I corrected her. To proving myself right. The district initiative launched 2 months later. I was named lead coordinator, which came with a small administrative stipend on top of my teaching salary. It wasn't lawyer or surgeon money, but it felt like validation. Local newspapers covered the program's launch. The headline read, "Teachers' Innovation Aims to Close Achievement Gap." There was a photo of me with a group of smiling students. My phone buzzed constantly that day with congratulations from colleagues and parents. Daniel framed the article and hung it in our living room. "I'm proud of you," he said, kissing my forehead. One message stood out though. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Saw your article." Dad saw it too. He didn't say anything. Vanessa. I stared at the text for a long time. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, wanted to imagine my father seeing my success and regretting his words. But mostly, I felt nothing. His opinion had stopped mattering somewhere along the way. I deleted the message and went back to work. The program's first year exceeded every expectation. Student test scores improved across the board. Teachers reported feeling more confident in their methods. Parents sent thank you notes. The superintendent called me into her office and offered me a position as district curriculum specialist. "You'd be overseeing program development for all our schools," she explained. "It's a significant increase in responsibility and salary." I accepted immediately. That evening, I called Claire to celebrate. "You need to tell your family," she said. "Shove this success right in their faces." But I hesitated. Did I want them to know? Would I be reaching out for the right reasons, or would I still be seeking their approval? "I don't think so," I finally said. "This is mine. I don't want to share it with people who never believed in me." Claire was quiet for a moment. "You know what? That's probably healthier." She was right. Sharing my achievements with my family would only open the door to more judgment, more comparisons, more ways for them to diminish what I'd accomplished. A year after the wedding disaster, I sat in my new office at the district headquarters. The space was small but mine, with a window overlooking the playground of the elementary school next door. I'd been in this role for 3 months, and already we were planning to expand my original program to neighboring districts. My phone rang. It was my mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Emma," she said, her voice strained. "Your father had a heart attack. He's in the hospital." The words took a moment to register. "Is he okay?" "He's stable." "But Emma, he's been asking for you." I closed my eyes, feeling that old familiar pull. The dutiful daughter in me wanted to rush to the hospital, to be there for family. But another voice, stronger now, reminded me of the wedding, of the silence that followed, of every time they'd made me feel small. "I need to think about it," I said. My mother gasped. "Think about it? He's your father. He could have died." "He stopped being my father when he abandoned me at my wedding," I said quietly. "I'll think about it." I didn't go to the hospital that day. Or the next. Daniel didn't push me either way. "It's your decision," he said. "Whatever you choose, I support you." On the 3rd day, Derek called. "You're being selfish," he said, his voice cold. "Dad made one mistake, and you're going to let him die without making peace?" I laughed, actually laughed. One mistake? Derek, he spent my entire life making me feel worthless because I didn't choose the career path he wanted. The wedding was just the loudest version of what he's always said. You're exaggerating. Dad's just traditional about success. Then why did he walk you down the aisle? Why did he give a speech at Vanessa's wedding about how proud he was? Why was I the only one who wasn't good enough? Derek had no answer for that. After a long silence, he said, "Just come see him." For Mom's sake. I thought about it for a long time after we hung up. Not for my father's sake, not even for my mother's, but for my own peace of mind. I went to the hospital on the 4th day. My father looked smaller in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and 4 lines. My mother sat beside him, her eyes red from crying. Vanessa and Derek stood near the window, their expressions a mixture of relief and judgment when they saw me. "Emma," my mother breathed, standing to hug me. I let her, but my arms stayed at my sides. My father opened his eyes, looking at me with that same measuring gaze he'd always had. "You came," he said, his voice weak but still carrying that edge of expectation. "I came because Mom asked me to," I replied, staying near the door. "Not for you." Vanessa gasped. Derek stepped forward. "Emma, he's sick. Can't you just what?" I interrupted. "Pretend everything's fine? Act like he didn't destroy one of the most important days of my life?" My father's monitor beeped faster. "I won't apologize for having standards," he said. "You chose a mediocre path when you could have been more." And there it was. Even from a hospital bed, he couldn't let it go. "I am more," I said, my voice steady. "I'm a district curriculum specialist now. My programs are being adopted by 5 school districts. I've improved outcomes for thousands of students. I've been featured in educational journals and newspapers. I'm doing work that matters, that changes lives." My father's expression didn't change. "You're still just a teacher," he said. "Vanessa makes 3 times your salary. Derek saves lives in surgery. What do you do? Babysit other people's children." The words should have hurt. A year ago, they would have destroyed me. But standing there in that hospital room, I felt nothing but pity. "You'll never understand," I said quietly. "Success isn't just about money. It's about purpose, about making a difference, about being valued for who you are, not what you earn." I turned to leave, but my mother grabbed my arm. "Please don't go. Not like this." I looked at her, really looked at her. "Why didn't you stop him at the wedding? Why didn't you defend me?" Tears filled her eyes, but she had no answer. I pulled my arm free and walked out. The hospital visit confirmed what I'd suspected. My father would never change. He would never see me as successful, never acknowledge my achievements, never apologize for the pain he'd caused. And I finally accepted that it wasn't about me. It was about him, about his narrow worldview, about his inability to value anything that didn't fit his definition of worth. "How do you feel?" Daniel asked when I got home. I sat on our couch, processing everything. "Free," I finally said. I went there hoping maybe, just maybe, facing death would have changed him. But it didn't. And realizing that set me free from ever hoping again. Daniel sat beside me, taking my hand. "You don't have to see them again if you don't want to." "I don't want to," I confirmed. "I'm done." Over the next few weeks, my mother called repeatedly, begging me to reconsider, to give my father another chance. Vanessa sent long text messages about family obligations and forgiveness. Derek stopped speaking to me entirely. I blocked them all. My work flourished in ways I'd never imagined. The program I'd developed won a state education award. I was invited to speak at conferences across the country. Teachers I'd never met reached out to thank me for resources I'd created. Education magazines interviewed me about innovative teaching methods. My salary had doubled from what I'd been making as a classroom teacher. Daniel and I moved to a larger apartment, one with space for a home office where I could work on curriculum development. We started talking about having children of our own someday. Life was good. Life was mine. One afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from a woman I didn't know. I saw your father's Facebook post about his disappointment in his middle child. I just wanted you to know that your work changed my daughter's life. She was struggling in school, failing math, and your program helped her understand for the first time. She's thriving now. You're not a disappointment. You're a hero to families like mine. I read the message 3 times, tears streaming down my face. My father was posting about me on social media. Even after everything, he was still publicly shaming me. I logged into Facebook for the first time in months and found his profile. Sure enough, there was a post from 2 weeks earlier. Pride in your children comes from their accomplishments. Some of my children have made me proud. Others chose easier paths and wonder why they're not celebrated. Success requires sacrifice and ambition, not settling for mediocrity. The comments were mostly from his friends, agreeing with his sentiment about young people lacking drive. But there were a few defending me, people who knew about my work, who had seen the articles. Jack, your daughter Emma is doing incredible work in education. Maybe success looks different than you think. He'd responded, teaching is babysitting with a college degree. I closed the app, my hands shaking with anger. But then I thought about that mother's message, about the thousands of students whose lives were better because of my work, about the teachers who had better tools because of my programs. His opinion was just noise. 6 months later, I received an unexpected call. The state education department wanted to recognize my program with their highest honor, the Excellence in Innovation Award. The ceremony would be broadcast and attended by the governor. We'd like you to give a speech about your journey, the coordinator said. Your story is inspiring to other educators. Standing on that stage 2 months later, looking out at hundreds of educators and state officials, I felt the weight of every moment that had led me here. I spoke about growing up feeling inadequate, about choosing passion over prestige, about the wedding day that broke me and rebuilt me. I was told I wasn't successful, I said, my voice steady. I was told my work didn't matter, that teaching was mediocre, that I was a disappointment. But success isn't measured by someone else's standards. It's measured by the lives you touch, the difference you make, the purpose you serve. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. The governor personally congratulated me afterward, shaking my hand and praising my innovations. Local news stations interviewed me. The interview aired on the evening news. Daniel and I watched it together, his arm around my shoulders. I looked confident on screen, professional, accomplished. Everything my father said I wasn't. My phone started buzzing immediately. Claire, you're on TV. I'm so proud. Former colleagues, saw your interview. Amazing. Students' parents, thank you for everything you've done for our children. Then a text from an unknown number, this is Vanessa. Dad saw your interview. He wants to talk. He says he's ready to apologize. I stared at the message for a long time. A year ago, 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, I might have jumped at this chance. I might have believed that finally, I'd get the recognition I'd craved my whole life. But now? Now I understood something crucial. His approval wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't validate my work any more than it already was. It wouldn't erase the pain he'd caused. It wouldn't make me more successful than I already felt. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked. "I'm thinking that I don't need his apology anymore," I said, setting my phone down. "Whether he's proud of me or not doesn't change what I've accomplished. It doesn't change who I am." Daniel kissed my temple. "Good. Because you're extraordinary, with or without his recognition." I didn't respond to Vanessa's text. 3 days later, she called. I let it go to voicemail. "Emma, Dad really wants to make things right. He's asking about your work, acting interested. Please just give him one more chance. We're family." Family. The word that had been used to manipulate me my entire life. Family meant accepting mistreatment because of shared blood. Family meant diminishing myself to make others comfortable. Family meant endlessly forgiving people who never changed. But I'd built a new definition of family. Daniel, who supported every dream. Claire, who celebrated every victory. My colleagues, who valued my contributions. The students and parents whose lives I'd touched. That was family. That was love. That mattered. My father wanting to talk now, after seeing me on television, after public recognition forced him to acknowledge my success, that wasn't real. That was ego, his need to be connected to something celebrated. A month later, my mother showed up at the district office. The secretary called my extension. "There's a Patricia Hartley here to see you. She says she's your mother." I considered saying I was busy, but curiosity won. I went to the lobby and found her sitting in one of the waiting area chairs, looking nervous and out of place. "We need to talk," she said when she saw me. I led her to my office and closed the door. She looked around at my diplomas on the wall, the awards on my shelf, the photos of me with students and colleagues. "You've done well for yourself," she said quietly. "Yes, I have. Your father is sorry. He knows he was wrong about you." I leaned against my desk, studying her face. Is he sorry, or is he embarrassed that everyone saw him dismiss a daughter who turned out to be successful? My mother's eyes filled with tears. Does it matter? He wants to fix this. It does matter, I said firmly. Because if he's only sorry because I became visible enough that he had to acknowledge me, that's not real remorse. That's just ego management. My mother stood up, anger flashing in her eyes for the first time I could remember. You're being stubborn. He's reaching out, and you're throwing it back in his face. I'm setting boundaries, I corrected. There's a difference. For 28 years, I tried to earn his love. I sacrificed my peace trying to become what he wanted. And it was never enough. Not until strangers validated my work, not until the media called me successful, not until it became embarrassing for him to dismiss me publicly. So you're just going to cut us all off? Your whole family? The family that stood by while he humiliated me? The family that told me I was overreacting? The family that blamed me for his cruelty? I shook my head. You're not my family. You're people who share my DNA and who made me feel worthless for not conforming to your limited worldview. My mother grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. You'll regret this. Family is everything. No, I said quietly. Self-respect is everything. Family is just people, and people have to earn their place in your life. She left without another word. That evening, I told Daniel everything. Did I do the right thing? I asked, needing reassurance even though I felt certain of my choice. You did the brave thing, he said. The right thing isn't always clear, but standing up for yourself is always brave. Over the next few months, I received occasional messages from Vanessa and Derek, each one trying a different approach. Guilt, Dad's getting older. You'll run out of time to fix this. Anger, you're tearing this family apart. Manipulation, he's not doing well. This stress isn't good for his heart. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on expanding my work. My programs were now being implemented in 12 school districts across 3 states. I was writing a book about innovative teaching methods. Universities were inviting me to guest lecture. I'd been promoted to Director of Curriculum and Instruction for the entire district, overseeing a team of 12 specialists. The little girl who'd been told she wasn't successful enough had built something remarkable. Not despite my father's rejection, but because of it. His cruelty had pushed me to prove myself in the ways that actually mattered. 2 years after the wedding disaster, I received a certified letter from my father's attorney. My heart raced as I opened it, fearing legal threats or some new manipulation. Instead, I found a formal invitation to a family meeting to discuss his will and estate planning. The letter explained that he wanted to ensure his assets were distributed according to his children's contributions to the family legacy and professional achievements. I showed it to Daniel, who read it with a frown. He's still trying to control you. Even from beyond the grave, he wants to dangle money as a measure of your worth. I read the letter again, seeing the manipulation clearly now. This was a final test, a last attempt to make me grovel for his approval and whatever inheritance he thought I should want. I wrote a response by hand on simple stationery. Jack, I don't want anything from your estate. Distribute it however you see fit among your other children. I've built a life I'm proud of without your support or your money. I don't need either now. I mailed it the next day and felt lighter than I had in years. Today, I stood in my office looking at a wall covered in letters from students, parents, and teachers. Each one told a story of how my work had made a difference. A child who finally understood reading. A teacher who found confidence in her methods. A parent who watched their struggling student transform. This was success. This was what mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Lunch today? I want to hear about your book deal. I smiled, grabbing my coat. Daniel was picking me up in an hour for a celebration dinner. My team had just won another state award for our innovative curriculum. Outside my window, I watched children playing at recess, laughing and learning and growing. This was my legacy. Not my father's approval or my family's recognition, but this, the knowledge that I'd chosen purpose over prestige, passion over profit, and in doing so, I'd changed thousands of lives. My father thought he'd won when he refused to walk me down the aisle, when he publicly declared I wasn't successful. But he'd actually given me the greatest gift possible, the freedom to stop seeking his approval and start building something real. I won. Not because I proved him wrong, but because I proved myself right.